I'm working in the suburb of Tokyo, and I want to give a public lecture today on children's education and development. Today, I would like to talk about reinforcement learning, which is really important, of course, and in the brain, uh, reinforcement learning processes involving dopamine, doing really wonderful job in sustaining our learning. And in artificial intelligence, of course, reinforcement learning is very important, and it's usually done without a teacher, but a reward function is defined so that the system tries to maximize the reward function. And that way, the natural or artificial neural networks would obtain ever high functioning capabilities, and that is the result that we get within ourselves and in artificial intelligence systems. Having said that, I think the conventional way that reinforcement learning is depicted has the limitation that it is usually done within a particular context. And for example, if you excel in a particular task, it doesn't necessarily mean that it would translate into a robust handling of situations that are faced by biological systems like us. After all, the purpose of natural neural networks in humans or other biological entities is to survive in a changing environment. And if you do well in a particular task, that doesn't translate into a general robust capabilities to survive in the wider wild. And that is something that we need to consider when thinking about the neural networks in the brain. In the brain, there are many different networks which are intertwined with each other so that there is no particular context that is dominant at any given time in the human brain. For example, if you are a board game player, like in shogi or chess, you would of course be well advised to do well in the game of your choice. But that is not actually the only context that you are in. For example, if you are playing chess and your friend passes by, then it depends on the context, but it might be as equally as important to greet him or her, while it might actually, somewhat distract you and make you play less well in the game of chess. So this kind of conflict of interest is always there, and you can already define a simple or simplistic reward function for natural neural network systems. So I think in the brain, there are competing neural networks with different reward functions, and sometimes they are in conflict with each other. So if you try to optimize one reward function, then you would sacrifice others. For example, if you're a student and you're studying for the entrance exam for universities, and but at the same time you might have your friends and lovers, and if you are not doing well in social life, that might actually be a bad thing for your life. So you need to take a balancing stance between learning per se and social life. Of course, social life is also learning, but sometimes it leads you to a conflicting situation. So in the brain, because of the architecture, the prefrontal cortex is kind of the resource managing center, and there are other networks related to that, and each neural sub-network, if you like, dedicated to a particular function, would try to maximize itself and its performance. But then it is the job of the prefrontal cortex to assign a resources such as attention and execution and so on, and so that as a whole the reward function for living purposes would be optimized. Now, it is arguable if it is debatable whether there could be a single reward function for life processes in general. It's like trying to define a wave function for the whole universe, and there might be one, but you probably couldn't define the single wave function in all practical purposes, and that same can be probably said about reward function for the whole brain. You can't probably define a single reward function for the whole brain. So it is always a balancing act between different purposes in life, and that makes life so interesting. Now, with artificial intelligence systems, for example, large language models and generative AIs, for now, we have been satisfied or have been forced to be satisfied with really rather simplistic reward functions, and that is understandable because you cannot yet describe how the interplay between different functions played out, because for one thing, we don't understand how the brain works, and for another, we don't understand how we can implement this balancing competition between different task-related reward functions. And so we don't have self-standing, autonomous artificial intelligence yet, something that would be able to sustain itself in the world in a condition similar to the living organisms, because we don't have the formula for describing sustainable, balanced optimization of reward functions, or a society of reward functions that would be able to support a system in many different situations. And that actually raises a very important issue, I think, about reinforcement learning in general. In reinforcement learning, typically we start from the assumption that you can define a reward function, and the name of the game is to try to optimize that reward function. And if you optimize the reward function, then the functionality is obtained by the network, natural or artificial, would be optimal or close to optimal. However, it could well be that in the developmental process, it could well be that you cannot actually define a reward function. You cannot actually define the reward function before the event. Possibly, all you could do is to kind of do a bookkeeping job of describing what the reward function was in the process of development after the learning has been done. It is a case of explainable reinforcement learning. I mean, when you want to try to explain what you have learned, you would communicate via natural language in the case of humans. And so you like to say that if you have gone to the school, you like to say that you have learned something, and that would make you more socially accepted and appreciated. And you might get credit for your learning, and you might eventually graduate from school. But that is not actually the learning process itself. You cannot say that you have learned such and such a thing through your learning processes in the school before the event, because you don't know what you want to learn. I mean, there are many learning outside the context of school environment, especially outside those put forward by teachers. And if you have learned something out of context, that is also great too. Actually, in many great schools, things are learned in an extracurricular way. Of course, you learn a lot from lessons in the school, the classrooms, but at the same time, you learn a lot of things through interactions with other pupils and casual remarks said by the teacher, and this cannot be described by a single reward function. Things can be only described by after the event, post event appreciation and appraisal of what you have learned. So in that sense, you cannot actually predetermine reward function in many cases. Of course, in exams, you can set a reward function. In many traditional school systems, the learning is done by rote learning, rote memorization, and that has led to many issues. But once you take a naturalistic view of the learning process, you realize that you cannot actually define a single reward function. Actually, the reward function is something that emerges in the bookkeeping process after the event. So I suspect that this is something that needs to be taken seriously, and you need to examine what's going on in human learning in general. And I think it is something that needs to be implemented in artificial intelligence systems too, if artificial intelligence systems are to be made more robust and close to the actual human learning that is happening. And this, of course, would have a lot to do with AI alignment, because in AI alignment, we need to align the learnings of the human brains with artificial intelligence systems. And in order to do that, we need to make a comparative studies of the two different entities that are facing each other now, natural and artificial intelligence. I've come to near the hall where I am giving my public lecture today, so I'm going to stop here. Thank you for listening. So the summing up of this short monologue is that in reinforcement learning, we need to assume, in reinforcement learning, we tend to assume that there's a single reward function, but that might not be actually realistic. We need to consider the possibility that reward functions can be only defined after the event in the bookkeeping process, which will lead to social credit systems and explainability. Thank you for listening.